Hey everybody, John Fenn here, Church Without Walls International, CWOWI.org. And for those in Europe, you might visit our EU website, CWOWI.eu. We're a house church network. And folks, basically, you know what? When I was a teenager, I realized that the book of Acts is normal Christianity. If your spiritual life doesn't look like the book of Acts, you need to reconsider what you consider normal. And I just encourage you to visit our website and find out more about a relationship based faith, which is celebrated by families and individuals gathering in homes, taking turns, sharing responsibility, becoming a family of faith. Anyway, CWOWI.org. All right, today I want to talk a little bit more about being led of the Lord. And it's something that I've never really taught on, but it's just something Barb and I have practiced over the years. And that is what I would call spying out the land. Now, we see this in Numbers chapter 13 when the children of Israel have wandered in the wilderness and the original generation has died out, and now it's their children who are set to go into the promised land. And in Numbers chapter 13, the Lord instructs Moses to send spies in the land. And he gives them instructions about looking what kind of land it is, and also the kind of people, the buildings, and also what kind of crops there are, and things of that nature. Now, the Lord has used this in our life most of the time when Barb and I have contemplated moving from one place to another. We have either I have gone ahead or we have gone together while we're praying about it and thinking about the move. In other words, when we were renting a house, I'll just say it this way, use this example. Back in 1987, we were the pastors of a church, and the little house next to the church was where we lived. It was a little 2-bedroom square, literally a square home with 2 bedrooms and 1 bath for us and our 3 growing boys. And we knew it was only temporary. So what we would do is we knew the Lord had a home for us to lease somewhere in the community. But we would get in the car, we'd pile the kids in the back, and we would just drive. And we would pray in the Spirit, and we would think about areas, that we'd like to live in, the proximity to church, different things of that nature. In fact, we were driving one day, and I passed a house on our right, and I looked at it, I said, a house just like that, that's what we need right there. It was a 1-level farmhouse, which would be good for our handicapped son, Chris. It had little pastures on either side, had room for the boys to play in the yards, etc. And as I drove by, I just said, that's what we need right there. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks later that we found out that a Baptist pastor in town had bought a house for his retirement, but he was leasing it out. And when we pulled in the driveway, we realized that was the house that we had just passed by 2 or 3 weeks earlier and said that was the one. So we kind of scout the land. When we contemplated moving from Colorado to Oklahoma, when the Father had talked to me about being a Bible school director, and I knew it was in Tulsa, I knew the church, and they didn't know that, but I knew it by the Spirit. So I took a trip first to spy out the land, to see what area of town bore witness. I went to different events in that church during those few days that I was gone, and just kind of drove around the area and say, where would we live? Father, could you reveal the house that you want us to live in? So we've done that. And then later, Barb and the boys came, and we had a spot that felt right in our spirit. I drove with her to get her confirmation, because the Lord will confirm any word in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. So I had an area, we drove around, and it just felt right, and we ended up renting a house there and living there about 5.5 years before we bought another house. And so this has happened with jobs, this has happened with homes, this has happened with all kinds of different things, where it seems like the Lord sends me ahead of time, to scout out the land. When we moved to where we currently live and have lived the last 15 years after we had to put our son Chris, a handicapped son Chris, in a group home, and it wasn't working out the distance. The home was 2 hours away from our house, and I just wasn't able to see Chris. We weren't able to see Chris more than once every 2 or 3 weeks. Because of ministry and travels and different things of that nature. And we knew that we needed to move close to him. In fact, it went like this. I'll just share our heart a little bit. I walked into his group home in May of 2008 to find out that Chris had given up the will to live. And the manager of the group home said, he's refused to get out of bed, eat, drink, have his medicines. He's just given up the will to live. We're going to have to discharge him to a nursing home or something. And so we knew that was immediately the call that we needed to move closer, that he needed that support. Because mentally he's 4 or 5 years old. How do you tell a 4-year-old that you have to live 2 hours away from the house that you've known and the family that you've known your whole life? And so we moved to be close, but it was the financial collapse of 2008. And I prayed about it. I reasoned it out. We were 50 years old at the time. And I reasoned it out, and I prayed about it. And then the Father showed me an area on a lake within 30 minutes of Chris's group home. And so I knew the area to go to. But here's what I did. I drove up and I spent 2 days going to everywhere except where the Lord was showing me, just to rule out the possibilities in the natural. I wasn't lack of faith or anything else, but I took this trip, this day trip ahead of time. It was a 2-hour drive or so. And I went to every area except where the Lord had shown me. I saw the house. I saw a wheelchair ramp in front. I saw it set in trees. I saw a vision of it. I went everywhere else for 2 days. On the third day, having eliminated all the other possibilities and just knowing in my mind that I'd done everything in the natural to do, I drove exactly to where the Lord had shown me. And it turned out to be a Baptist pastor who was selling his house. We worked a deal out, and we were able to close and move in. And we've been here ever since, within about a half an hour of Chris's group home. And he has thrived. He has just done so well with and liking his environment now and his weekly home visits. But it was a case where the Lord has always seemed to lead us in a way that I've gone ahead as far as a house, sometimes a job, etc. You'll scan around. You'll think, okay, what kind of job, what sector of the workforce? Maybe it's not what you're trained in. Maybe it's not what you're schooled in. But you look through the ads. You drive past buildings and you think, I wonder what's in there. You're looking for something in your spirit that bears witness, while in your mind you're working out the natural things. So proximity to home, travel time, expenses. How much can I make? Different things of that nature. Jesus in Luke chapter 9, and it's like, I forget where it is, 51, 52, 53, something like that, when he had it revealed to him that the time was coming up for his death, that it says he sent messengers before his face. He set his own face to go to Jerusalem, but he set his face to do that, and then he sent messengers ahead. In Numbers chapter 13, that I started with, just to bring this full circle, the children of Israel knew that God had given them the promised land. They knew that that's where they were to be. But in the natural, they needed to send spies out to spy out the land, to do what they knew to do in the natural, to take accounting of everything that they had, to take an inventory. And so in doing so, then when they moved in, they knew what they were looking at. They knew the price that would have to be paid. They knew the sacrifices. They knew the hard work. They knew all that, because even though they knew it was God who was leading them, they knew that they would have to do some things in the natural to walk in those things that God had already provided. And that's what I'm talking about when you're talking about changing jobs, you're talking about changing homes, you're talking about even a church. What church should I attend with my children? You think through it. Okay, it's got to have a nursery because I've got a baby. It's got to have a strong children's church. In my heart, I'm a worshiper. I don't care about the sermon, but it's got to have a good worship team. And you scout around, and you're looking for something that bears witness in your spirit. You're kind of scouting the land as you visit different churches. This principle, like I said, we see it. Joseph went ahead of his brethren, and they didn't know that they were being led by the Lord. Genesis chapter 12, we see another example. Abraham, the Lord appears to Abraham in Genesis 12:1. And yes, it's a vision. He appears to him according to Acts chapter 7 and verse 2. Stephen tells us the Lord appeared to him and told Abraham to get out of your country, get out of your dad's house, and go for a walk. I'm going to show you the land where I'm leading you. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 through verse 10 details that, or verse 7 especially details that. And so that happens to us. So just think about this principle about going ahead, kind of scouting out the land, seeing how it bears witness. And I think you'll find the Lord will lead you in that. All right, God bless. Hope this has been a blessing. CWOWI.org.